So we're joining up with Pat McArt and his Donegal mountain bunker.
Morning, Jude.
He's getting good morning to you, Pat. You're getting ready to go out and do good deeds in the world. But before you go, we want to talk a bit about what it says, not comprehensively in the papers because there's so many things that the papers contain. But one of the items that we talked about maybe considering was this article in the New York Times by Paul Krugman. I don't know, do you read Paul Krugman regularly, Pat?
Yeah, I did. I haven't seen it much recently, but sometimes back during the recession, the recession here, global recession, but he was very, very good. He was very anti-austerity, very anti some of the stunts pulled by the big financiers. For me, he was actually, back then, was the only sensible voice I could actually come across.
Absolutely. He's a very, very clear writer. You know, there's no unnecessary...
He's won the Nobel Prize for economics, but, you don't have to be a genius in economics to read what he said. In fact, he's very much a social writer because the comments, it's not just economics, it's how they affect me, you, and the ordinary people. That's what's good about it.
He's really in touch, which is not something you can say for everybody. But anyway, he says, he's talking about the state that the United States has come to. And he says, how is it that a can-do nation has become a land that can't deal with pandemic, where the leader of the free world has become the destroyer of international institutions, and how the birthplace of modern democracy is ruled by a would-be authoritarian? Those are very bleak things. And he ends his piece too on a terribly downbeat note. He says at the end, he asks himself, he says, so now we're at the moment of crisis when all the good things America stands for are endangered by the poisonous legacy of our original sin. And we'll come back to that original sin in a minute. But his last two sentences are frightening. He says, will we make it through? Honestly, I'm not at all sure that we will. You know, he's essentially saying that the states, there's been too many bad things happening for the United States to really survive properly.
Dude, not only is Trump as an authoritarian, there's something seriously malignant about him. The sham thing on Monday night of going to a church, peaceful protesters. I saw the Secretary of Defense on saying they didn't throw bombs at them. They threw pepper bombs at them. There was, it was a distinction without a difference, and all the rest, and so on. What he is doing is seriously. But what's even worse, there are neighbours on every morning. Last night on prime time on RT, there was a guy on again defending Trump, and to my mind at this stage, defending Trump is defending the indefensible. Like, his attitude towards the death of George Floyd is unbelievable. Somebody says, yes, he has expressed regret. Why has he expressed regret? Oh, I saw something terrible and I didn't like it, but let's leave it to the police to do their investigation. That's what so far. There has been no effort at unification, no effort at reaching out, no effort to say this was a disgrace and all the rest. And the other thing, let's move on quickly. How many black people are in his cabinet? How many black people has he appointed? They did a COVID-19 committee, not a single black face on it. He has a guy was on Facebook quite recently, a contractor who was doing repairs on a yacht for Trump. Trump told him not to take a black guy on board, and then threatened to sue him. The guy won the case. Trump has his father was a member of the Ku Klux Klan. I could go on and on and on. And this is a guy who's saying he's done more for black people than anybody since Abraham Lincoln.
Yeah. Well, Paul Krugman's article, as I think you know, he links it to Joe Biden, who has said that the original sin, and I think that's the heading of Krugman's article, actually. But, the original sin of slavery stains our country today. That's what Biden said, which I thought was Biden hasn't said much, but the few things he has said since the killing of George Floyd seem to me to be right on the money, I saw a black guy. Yeah, go ahead, Pat. Go ahead.
No, other thing that really, I've got a personal theory. I think Trump is the sort of the follow-on to Obama. I think white America. Uh, Somebody made the comment. Apparently, Bill Clinton was talking, and they're not sure whether he meant it as a compliment or an insult. Apparently, he was at a. He says, 10 years ago or 15 years ago, Obama, this guy would have been serving us coffee. Now, whether he meant that, isn't it great to see the fact that he's now president of America? Apparently, the comment is still, but they're the white, the reaction from the whites on Obama, Trump is. I met an Irish American journalist. He was over some years ago. He was on a personal capacity. He was with another guy, and his vitriolic hatred of Obama, totally irrational. He couldn't explain it. And then I realized the man's a bigot, absolute right-wing bigot. There was nothing more. The fact that it was a black man was in the White, Jude, that's what's really frightening. Trump, as far as those people if he brings back mom apple pie and the white picket fence, they want to go back to when America was white and when they ruled the roots and all that. And that's what's really behind, in my opinion, most of this.
Krugman is talking about. He talks a bit about this notion of that the country was built on slavery, and we forget that very often. Yeah. I saw a black guy talking on CNN the other night, quite a radical guy, and he had to bleep out some of his words, but he runs a sort of a homemade radio TV station. But he said, no, maybe it was Spike Lee, actually. Spike Lee, it was Spike Lee. Spike Lee, the movie maker. And he said 3 things about the death of George Floyd. He says, think of the condition of our country, the foundations of it. He says it is founded on ethnic cleansing. They killed the
Native Indians.
They ruined the Indians. Or what we call the Indians, the Native people.
Yeah.
Then they built, on top of that, they built slavery. And finally, on top of that, they built this whole master race of white supremacy, essentially, in its lighter forms. One thing I would say is this, though, Pat, before we feel too virtuous, it's everywhere. It's not just in the States. It's not even just in Britain. No. I saw some of the British in their demonstrations at Westminster holding up placards saying it's here too and so on. We Irish, because we have so few black people, tend to pat ourselves on the back. We're a bunch of bloody bigots. Give us half a chance and we're just as bigoted as anybody.
Jude, I'm glad you brought that up because when I went to America in 1972 and I was staying with this man, don't want to go into the details, but basically an Irishman. And a genuinely nice man, but he owned a bar. And I went to the bar one day, and this black guy came in, and the guy says, "Can I have a beer?" and whatever it was. The man says, "Okay." Went off and served somebody else. A couple of minutes later, the guy, "Can I have a beer?" Didn't serve him. The black guy left, and I went to talk to him. I said, "Why not serve him?" He says, "It's simple as this." He says, "The police and the fire people come into my pub. If I serve him, they will not come into my pub." So he didn't serve black people. Now, Jude, that was 1972, and it was as blatant and as nasty as I'm just explaining it. And a lot of the Irish people I met in America, a lot of them were policemen, and some of them were firemen, and they were as racist as you'll ever come across, and I mean seriously racist. They were somewhere to the right of Genghis Khan and Adolf Hitler.
Why would you say that? Why would you say that is? Was that their experience? As policemen that they were continually running into young black guys, or was it something more primitive than that?
I think it's something more primitive.
Were they brought up that way?
Something I can't explain it, but their old Catholicism was fairly right wing, and it was ingrained in them. And I don't know how that metamorphosized into this sort of right wing theory. Like the Catholic Church, when I was growing up, like even in the Republic of Ireland, a simple thing like the mother and child scheme introduced by Dr. Noel Brown, but that was socialism, so that cannot be accepted. So you can flick that to America. Like I know people even now, the salt of the earth, I love them, but their views are somewhere to the right of, I don't know, you can pick your own, take whatever you're having yourself type thing. They believe they can't change their beliefs, and that's it. And I think that's one of the problems the Irish when they went to America. They were taught by nuns and priests, and they went down one path and nothing. They never diverged.
Yeah, well, I suppose we were brought up with the notion of the black babies. and
Yeah,
that these people were, you got to be nice to them because they couldn't really do things themselves.
yeah,
Krugman says that in his inbox, in his, his email, he says in this article that he's got far more he's a Jew, and
yeah,
far more anti-Semitic insults and threats in my inbox than ever before. And he puts that down to Trump giving the green light to any kind of anti-Semitic or racial prejudice of any kind is okay. Do you think
yeah.
does that stand up, given the fact that some of Trump's family are Jewish?
No, I think what Krugman, if I'm reading him right, he's given the green light to racism, and like you can't turn off racism. It's anti-Jews,
Not
anti-black.
Krugman now. You're not saying Krugman's given the green
No,
light. You're
no,
saying
no.
Obama
Trump,
is.
no,
Yeah.
no. Sorry. Well, if I didn't mean it, I mean Krugman. I think what Krugman means, Trump has given the green light to racism. Like when you see some of the things Trump, like those protesting against the death of George Floyd, Trump described them as thugs. He loosened the police onto them like a pack of dogs the other night, Monday night, peaceful protesters. Yet he describes in Charlottesville the Ku Klux Klan as good people. And the white guys who went up with the AK-15s or 47s, whatever the hell it was, to disrupt meetings, town hall meetings, to demand their right to a haircut and open up their local restaurant. He described them as, patriots. So, like, you don't have to go far to figure out, once you unleash the dogs of racism, you can't put it, say, oh, well, hey, that form of racism is okay. So, like, Krugman's a Jew, so you can bet your life now he's getting all the anti-Semitic stuff, and he's, go back and all that rest of it.
Do you think all these demonstrations in the end, we're coming near the end of the time now, Pat, but do you think really, do the people demonstrating really think that the attitude to black people will change radically? So let's just keep it in the States for the moment.
Right.
Because the black people are a huge proportion in terms of poverty, huge proportion in terms of prisoners in jails. All again and again, they just simply don't have an equal share or a comparative share in the prosperity and in the power that resides in America. Do you think that's going to change because so many people have marched for George Floyd?
No, but what it might do, something. There's a lot of talk about legality, but very little talk about morality in the American. Like they're trying to say what the police done was legal and what this is. Legal's got very little to do with a lot of what's going on at the moment. But Jude, no, to answer your question directly, no, I don't think it'll change it that terrible. If you listen to any of the programs and there's any, debate between a Democrat and a Republican, no one has on the Republican side seems to have got offside about Trump. They are still enabling him every which way. The moral ethics of the Republican Party have gone totally. It's all about staying in power and looking after Trump, and I don't see how that's going to change anytime soon.
But even Biden was, I think it's possible too. Remember, Biden was to defeat Trump in November. Do you not think there'll still be the same essential structure in the States that there is today? And
Absolutely.
has been for the last couple of 100 years.
Yeah, I don't see that. Jude, there's all sorts of subtle ways of ensuring people don't get jobs and all that. Hey, Jude, the best example I had seen, and it wasn't anybody dead or anything like that, was the black professor walking through a park and the white woman with the dog off the leash. And he said to her, please put that dog on the leash because it was one of them dogs, And it's on Facebook. Anybody can look it up. And she says, the next thing, other than the fact that he recorded it, I'd say she said, I'm going to call the police on you. I'm going to say an African-American guy is threatening me. Now, this was no hillbilly who was using his sister's teeth. This was, what do you call it? This was an educated white woman, allegedly, and all the rest. So with entrenched attitudes like that, the whole system is geared towards looking after whitey. And the system, go ahead.
You think it'll stay like that?
I don't think that's going to change.
Well, the very fact we're talking about it so much, the very fact that there are all these demonstrations might suggest that there actually is some change. Because one of the things in the past, many of the commentators have said this, that in the past, George Floyd's death would have just been another name. But the difference was there was a phone in the place. And now in virtually all of these deaths, there's somebody's got a phone. And when you see these
the guy who
pictures, you
said that
suddenly
was what?
say, this is just isn't good enough. Just isn't good enough.
No,
I would be a bit more optimistic. I think it'll be slower than we think. But I do
yeah,
believe that the American people a lot of people are really, really moved by these pictures. And that I do believe there might be a change, you know?
yeah. Well, by the way, the person who said that was Will Smith, the actor. He says it was always happening. The difference is now it's been filmed.
Yeah.
Because of mobile phones. Jude, I hope you're right. I really genuinely do, but I can't see it. No, to take your argument, to use your own argument on a previous occasion, you said to me about Obama. Obama got president, but not a whole lot of things changed. It doesn't actually prove, a lot. Like people will go out and protest, and there will be, of course, a heightened awareness of and all the rest. But hey, come on, you and me are not of that much of a different generation. I remember the '60s and Martin Luther King, and here we are 60 years later, a white policeman with his hand in his pocket, kneeling on the neck of a black man, and very confident in doing it in the middle of a public street. And you tell me things have changed.
Well, I'm not saying that you have changed, but there is a possibility, and we'll just finish with this, Pat. I think there's a possibility that there will be real change if the American people choose Biden over Trump in November. Because one thing about Biden, whether you like him or not, or whether you think he's sort of Teflon or not, he always has been respected and even loved by the black community. I'm not sure why, but he has been. The blacks have always had a very soft spot for Joe Biden. So if Biden was to get in, they say that he does have some rather more radical plans than many of us think.
Well, he
10 seconds.
he was a very well got when he was Barack Obama's vice president. Now, the other side of the story, Jude, that might go against him with a lot of the white people, because he might be seen as being too friendly towards the blacks and maybe too amenable to changes that would help them. Jude, America has become a very, very divided society.
Well, time, as they say, time will tell. Okay, thanks very much, Pat. We'll talk again then.
Talk again, Jude.
All the best now.